Well, thank you so much for staying with us. That picture is not pleasant, is it? You see, stakeholders in the built environment have concluded that the greatest culprit in the rising incidences of building collapses are governments at all levels have shown that they do not have enough capacity to hold the incidents across the country. Now, a few days after this 7-story building collapsed on Banana Island, Lagos, another building caved in even though it was without a casualty in Ladipo area, Ladipo Luo, that's Apapa area of Lagos. A 2-story building under construction collapsed, giving indication that all efforts to ameliorate collapse of buildings in Lagos have not yielded enough fruit until now. As was reported, a bolt of lightning hit the building before it came down at about 9 a.m. on the said day. Two people will be joining us, but let's begin with Engineer Elizabeth Oricha, who is MD Jelip Concept Limited. She's former Director, Satellite Towns Development Department of the Federal Capital Territory Administration. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, madam. Well, we've only yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we've mostly been hearing of these collapses in Lagos. From your experience and professionally, what's the situation like in other parts of the country when we talk about building collapses?
It's really traumatizing. It's a very bad experience that in the 21st century we are still having so much collapse of buildings, simple structures like we are seeing. And it's sad that it's happening, but I hope with all these discussions here and there, things will change. People will get to know what they should do and how they should approach their development so that we don't keep having such collapses.
But the issue a number of people have raised is about whether or not government is doing enough to put a stop to it. A number of buildings collapsed within very short days. We've talked about 2 this morning. I heard about 4 in all within a very short time of about 2-3 weeks or thereabout. I can't quite confirm that now, but that was the information that was making the rounds. These 2 were in Lagos. There was one in Ibadan, a number of other places like that. There are those who point at governments not being able to curtail the trend. How do you react to that?
Definitely, government has to do a lot more, but I think that the developers should take responsibility for their developments, for their properties. It's just like blaming government for a failed health. Yes, you may say the structures are not there for people to access, but if I'm having malaria now, I will not stay in my house and expect somebody to come and, take me to the hospital. If you want to put up a structure that will last, that will stand the test of time, as a developer, you should do the right thing first. Yes, as a way of sanctions and punitive measures, I think we need to still do much more as a nation so that when people, are punished for their inactions, I think others will learn lessons and they will change. So I agree with you that there has to be more, punitive measures on the part of the developer, on the part of professionals that are involved, in the supervision of buildings.
The process of monitoring. What is the process? And from your experiences, having worked, with a government agency, you might be able to tell us what is supposed to be the process, and in what ways do people sidestep these processes that evoke the kind of issue we're talking about now, almost intractably?
Okay, if you want to put up a structure, for instance. You get the architect design the structure for you based on your the brief you must have given the architect, and then the structural engineer will do a design that will make the building stable. We design for stability as engineers. And then you put all the drawings together and submit to approving authority. In Abuja, for instance, we call it Development Control Department. You submit to the approving authority. They have the professionals there that go through the design and confirm that it's adequate. If there's any lapse or if there's any deficiency anywhere, they point it out. And then you get the drawings approved after passing through the normal stages of checks. So when that approval comes to the developer's hand, you are expected to comply with that design. But what happens most times is that sometimes there are lack of compliance to approved designs, and it's part of the reasons why buildings collapse. For instance, a building is approved drawing you have is for 2 suspended floors, and they go ahead and add 1 or 2 more. Or it's for a residential building, and they go ahead and, use it for commercial. Those are issues that, affect the stability or durability of the structures.
There is a lot more on that, but thankfully, I mentioned this earlier, that my colleague was locked down in traffic. We have secured her release from the traffic, and she's here with me this morning.
Good morning.
I hope how was your incarceration?
Oh, my word. I mean, I've never seen traffic like that before. And thanks for asking. No, I don't live in Kuchiwenji. I do live in Lagos. I mean, it's taking me from 6:15 to, 10:30 to get here.
Okay.
That tells you how much that traffic is out there this morning. It is simply crazy. And the deadline for completion of that highway is tomorrow.
Well, miracles still happen.
Oh.
It's not tomorrow yet.
So guys, we'll wait for the miracle to happen and for that job to be completed by tomorrow.
Okay. That's if that's possible, but hey, go ahead.
I'm here. Is the commissioner ready now?
Yes, the commissioner is ready for us now.
The Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Lagos State, Mr. Gbenga Omotosho. Good morning and thank you for joining us. Now, the engineer has mentioned approvals from government before these buildings go up. And then she also said that sometimes people just sidestep those approvals, add floors that were not approved by government and stuff like that.
Don't complicate it. So let's go back to what we were doing before.
Mr. Motosho, whose duty is it to ensure that those approvals are adhered to?
Well, I do not know whether you can hear me, madam.
Clearly.
But I can hear you clearly. I've been trying to connect my video, but it seems not to be connecting. So there is what we call a building control agency. That is the one that approves all these in charge of buildings under the Ministry of Fiscal Planning. So those are the people, and they comprise experts. They have experts there, experts in the built industry, engineers, structural engineers, and all manner of civil engineers. So they are the people who have the human resources and capability to approve buildings.
But the challenge that being raised here, Mr. Motosho, I don't know if your office or the Lagos State government gets these complaints that people get approvals, but as the engineer Richard mentioned, they get approval for X number of floors, but then they put an additional floor, or they adjust the building structure, building design on the go in violation of the approvals that they got. Is that something you can confirm?
That is true, and that is criminal, and that is why part of the reasons why buildings are going down. You get approval to have 4 floors, and then all of a sudden you raise it up to 6, whereas the foundation can carry only 4, and that's what you presented to the authorities for approval. So by the time you raise it to 6, and then the foundation can no longer carry it, or something just goes wrong, then the building goes down. So it happens in most cases. That is the cause of buildings that are going down, and it's criminal.
When it comes to high rises, Mr. Motosho, how much is the state involved in the construction of it?
Well, we are involved up to the level of trying to ensure that there is compliance with what the builder would like to build. You want to build a 6-story building, and then our engineers, they look at the drawings, and then they go to the site to check what is going on. But if they find any infraction, then they mark the building and ask you to stop working. And at the point of being asked to stop working, people will behave as if they have complied. Then they will go and find a way either to go and be doing construction at night, a way of shielding the site from the government. And before the government goes back there, something snaps, and then buildings go down, and that is also a problem.
Well, perhaps that also raises a question as well, Mr. Motosho. You said that you have confirmed that these things do happen. People unseal sealed construction sites, and they continue work, and things happen. You said it is criminal. From experience, from the practices of government, from the data of government, how many people have been arrested or prosecuted because of this kind of criminality that you talk about?
Yeah, the Ministry of Justice has a record of people who have been taken to court to face the law because of infractions in building codes, because of trying to cut corners, because of in actual fact, a building falls and somebody is held liable for that. So they have a record of such people, which I don't have often now.
Mrs. Oricha,
yes.
Sometimes substandard material is used, and in these hard times, I mean, one shouldn't be surprised that constructors, builders try to cut corners. Whose duty is it to ensure the quality of stuff used, especially for high rises?
Well, we have the Standard Organization of Nigeria that should monitor the quality of materials that are used in the construction industry. For instance, the reinforcement, the iron rods that you know. You discover that if you get to market and you're looking for 16 mm, what we call iron 16, what you get most of the time is 12 or 14, and they write 16 on it. And meanwhile, the engineer has designed his structure for 16 mm, or you design to use 12, and what is available is 10. The criminality there is even that, even though they know it's 10, they write 12 on the body. So except you have a caliper to check, what you're buying, you may never know that they are giving you 10 for 12. So I think that the organizations that is responsible for monitoring these things should be up and doing. And then the professional that is using it, please, as much as possible, get basic, like a caliper to measure the diameter of the iron rod you're using. Ensure that the quality of concrete, if the quality recommended is 25, Newton per millimeter squared, for instance, grade 25, we call it, and ensure that there is quality measures put in place on the site, that quality of concrete is what you are using on the site. So it is both the organization that is supposed to monitor and the professionals on site. You should ensure that you have a double, monitor on what is available for you to use on site.
Yeah, the agency can only monitor the market. But on a building site, the person, the agency does not come to the building sites to examine what things are being used, do they?
Exactly.
So they can only monitor what is going into the market. But the guys who are going to now buy the wrong things and bring to the site. Somebody has responsibility for examining the materials to be used based on the design of the building, right?
That's correct.
So who does that on site?
I have in my practice, on site, had to send samples of, the reinforcements that I'm going to use to laboratories or to check the strength, because sometimes you want to use 425, and what you are having is less than 400 or 350 strength of the iron rod. So when you are into a critical construction, as a professional, you should make extra effort to ensure that the material you are using is what is specified in the design you have. But then, I think there should still be, I agree with you that the organization that should monitor this quality may not even know what gets to the market. Then who is to be blamed? From the factory where it's coming from, up to the point it gets to the market, somebody should monitor the quality. You can't, we shouldn't have excuses for having substandard materials in the market. It may not be easy for everyone to keep taking samples to the laboratory to go and check. The organizations that should monitor this quality and ensure that the right thing gets from the factory to the market should please help us, because we are losing lives, we are losing resources, we are losing credibility as a nation.
Mr. Masasha, now, do you think that the steps being taken by government after these collapses happen, do you think they get adequate publicity such that any crooked person who has it in the back of their mind to do some kind of cutting of corners that may end up in a building collapse, such that that kind of person is called to order?
I think all these steps that we take after every unfortunate incident gets adequate publicity, especially among people in the beauty industry. They know that the government says this about what has happened, the government says that about what has happened, and it's a signal to them that if they do anything that is strong that endanger the lives of Lagosians, that the government can easily go after them. But unfortunately, the greed factor sets in. A man obtains an approval to build 4 floors, and then he gets it gets oversubscribed, and then he thinks he can put more floors on it, and the man feels that he's now an expert because he has been building and building. He's a very well-known name in the industry, and then he begins to do things on his own without inviting experts who are registered with the Council of Registered Engineers or Structural Engineers, and then all of a sudden it happens again. So it's the human factor that is majorly the problem. It's not because the government has not been playing its own part. The people who have been taken to court, the people know them, and then they are people who are generally well known in the industry. And all the steps the government is taking, there's no step that the government is taking that doesn't carry along the professionals in the industry. But as we are talking now, there are certain things that the government is doing to ensure that we get stiffer on all of these things. We get firmer on all of these things in ensuring that people obey the law, because that is the major cause of it. People don't obey the law. They don't want to, they are just want to perpetrate illegality. Unknown to them, they are endangering the lives of Lagosians. So I feel that what we are doing, people know about it. and they will continue to know about it, especially all of the new programs that we are bringing out now to stop these kind of calamities.
Well, Mr. Motosho, perhaps the question a number of people might be asking is how stiff are these penalties? We know, of course, that government took a very strong decision, was it in September last year, when the Commissioner for Physical Planning and Urban Development had to resign over a collapsed building that took place at the time. But then it's also on record, which I'm pretty sure that your office is aware of, that data from the Lagos State branch of the Building Collapse Prevention Guild recorded, says that a staggering 115 incidents of building collapses happened within the last 10 years. But guess what? The years 2019 to 2022 recorded the highest number of building collapses in the last decades, each with 20 different cases in each of these years. That is definitely something that concerns government and is something that no one is going to even shy away from. So the question then abounds as to whether or not those measures being taken by government are stiff enough to instill deterrence so people do not do it. Even from among officials of government who are supposed to perform the functions that Engineer Richard has described the other time, as well as the engineers and the contractors themselves.
Well, you are right to say that where the measures may be seen as not stiff enough. And I said that the human element, the greed factor, when people just feel that it's an opportunity for them to make money, not considering that they are endangering the lives of Lagosians, that one is also there. But now the Lagos State government is coming up with what we call a certified accreditor program. That certified accreditor program is the one that will bring together everybody in the industry as a team that can monitor from day one when you want to submit your drawing, that I want to build a building. All of the people who are in charge, the civil engineers, the structural engineers, they will be there. There will be a pool of experts to draw from that will be okaying all these drawings and following up, on how the building is going, supervising the building of any building, especially the ones that are above 4 floors. And I think when you have this kind of pool of experts, this kind of a problem will reduce or will disappear.
Well, Engineer Richard, perhaps this goes back to the professionals such as yourself in this regard. Do you see a role for professionals? The Commissioner for Information and Strategy in Lagos has just said that there is a measurement tool being used now it's coming up by government to ensure that even from the position, from the stage of documentation, you get it right professionally. Is there a role for professional bodies? We know that there's a Building Collapse Prevention Guild. Such organizations as that, civil engineers, construction engineers, and all. Is there a role for them in all of these? I ask because we know that doctors have a way of ensuring that they don't have quirks among themselves. Lawyers have the MBA, for instance, to ensure that you don't even practice, as significantly as you might if there wasn't any regulations in place. Do you see a role for engineers or the engineering professional practitioners in preventing building collapses all over the nation?
Ayola, there's a great role that the professional bodies have to play, and they are playing it. And I don't know, from the records of building collapses, if you get to site, you hardly have issues of maybe, for instance, like I belong to the engineering profession, where the lapse is on the engineer. Some of those sites are not properly manned by professionals. Some of the sites. That's why I said the other time that the developers have to take responsibility for their... If you're going to put 100 million, for God's sake, in a project, what does it take you to set aside 5 to 10% of that to ensure a qualified professional is engaged to supervise and ensure that the right thing is done on your side.
Madam, before you continue, my apologies.
The professional body,
my sincere apologies,
ensures
madam.
that
my apologies, madam.
Engineering professionals in the field
Can you
are
hear
properly
me?
trained.
Can you hear me?
And are, you know.
My apologies, sincere apologies for butting in. You said that there are some sites that are not manned by engineers, and you also cited now that some of those sites are worth 100 million naira. Who polices such investments? Who polices such? Who should police such projects or such sites, such construction sites, when there are no professionals?
Just like the commissioner said while he was talking, he said the professionals are there and they send out sometimes, you know, like stop work order, and at night these people come back to do. I think that what should be doing going forward is when there's a default or lack of compliance to instructions that is given by government officials or professional bodies, there should be a sanction on the developer not to go ahead or not to even, you know, in any way complete his structure. Because if he's not complying with the instructions given by the professional body or the government organization as a result of his sharp practices, and they don't have the capacity to stop him or to stop the work, then that's why we keep having these issues. The truth is, the sites, you know, I cannot go to every site, or professionals cannot go to every site to know who and who is on the site. The developer who wants to develop his structure should look out for quality, registered, experienced professional to engage on his side to protect his investment, to protect lives that he's providing that, you know, building for.
Mrs. Oricha, we discussed this matter with we've discussed this matter with a number of engineers, and they put the buck squarely at the table of structural engineers. From your experience, are structural engineers, if they have a professional body, are they sufficiently concerned to be looking at this matter critically and calling all their members to order so that this kind of thing does not continue to happen?
Sure, there's, like, I don't know, I keep saying, I don't know at any point in time where any professional has ever been, you know, found wanting professionally on any side that is not, you know, sanctioned. On every side, if the right professionals are there, I keep repeating this because we have a lot of quacks, a lot of people called engineers on site that are actually not engineers. I tell you, you go to site a mason. In fact, at a time, one day we were supervising a project and somebody we know is a mason. We got there and they are calling him engineer. We had to say, engineer from where? So I think that the right thing is for the professional body surely puts a lot of sanctions on ground for any engineer that defaults. And we have had a few issues. But on a general note, quacks, people who are not properly trained to handle construction of multi-story buildings are the ones there. And that's why we keep having the issues we are having. Where there was something I was reading the other day. They made an analysis there in Lagos that most out of 100 buildings that collapse, or let's say 10 buildings that collapse, 7 are by private owners. The others, maybe like 20 for 2 for government or corporate organization, only 1 for a big organization. The truth is, these private developers don't want to pay for professional services. And that is why they keep having the issues they have on the site.
Okay. Well, there's this question that's just coming from an email, and it's for you, Mr. Motosho. It's from Magnus Okoro, who sent us an email, says, I want to ask Mr. Igbenga Motosho why Lagos State Physical Planning Permit Authority and Lagos State Building Control Agency staff collude with illegal developers even when their attentions are called to illegal structures. It goes further to say that most times a mere renovation permit are changed to a building structural change without a new building approval, a new building drawing approval, because these two Lagos State government agency staff are compromised. A visit to Lekki Phase 1, Lagos State, will confirm these assertions. So even points to an example. How do you respond?
Well, I would like to thank the man who sent in that
Magnus
question.
Okoro is his name.
Yeah, Mr. Magnus Okoro. Very nice observation. But in any human environment, there is you cannot. When you have when you have good people, you must also have a very bad people. The guys in charge of fiscal planning and then building control agency, they are very good professionals. But among them, you will also have people who will not be of a good character. And those are the ones who may be doing the kind of thing that he has mentioned. But if you look at it generally, all of the buildings that are falling, they are buildings that have been marked by these same people who are said to be corrupt and all of that, who said, stop order, don't work here. We put a seal on such a buildings and padlock the site. And yet, people who are greedy collude with professionals who are not true to their own profession to go and start reconstructing all these buildings until they fall, and then the public will know about them. Look at the one in Apapa a few days ago. It was already marked, stop order. The one on Banana Island, it was not approved. So these are things that, and then our own people too, who we also constitute themselves into a stumbling block, then the government is trying to do its own monitoring duties, and then they will go to estates that are gated, and then government officials will not be allowed to go into such estates. And by the time the government officials will plan to go back there, you see that something has happened. So the man may not be lying, but that is not the general conduct of all the people in LASG or fiscal planning. If you look at it, mostly they are people who are of very good conduct, who are of nice character, and who are thorough professionals. But among these also people, you will have some who are very weak in character and who may not be trusted.
Well, I see that there are numbers to those sealed buildings from the videos that we put on air the other time for people to see, to validate some of the things that you're saying. So if you can educate people on what the process is, that when a building is sealed, then there is a number put there. What does that mean? And if and when the building site is unsealed, how do people know that it was government that unsealed it so they don't keep calling back?
Well, what happens is that when you see a building as a government official, a building that you suspect may not have had an approval, and then you go and check, and the building has no approval, then you put that mark there. And that mark shows that whoever is building there should come to the office of fiscal planning to come and find out why the building was marked and bring all the papers. And in most cases, you find out that these guys, they don't have papers at all to show. They just started building, or they are building what they did not tell the authorities that they wanted to build in terms of height or in terms of size. So, and when the authorities ask them to go and do certain things, they give them conditions. Once they fulfill those conditions, the authorities will go back there and unseal the building and wipe out the marks that are there. But you see that in most cases, it's either the authorities are not allowed to go in there to check again, or people just go at night to start building with the collusion of fraudulent professionals, and then something happens and the whole world knows. Most of the buildings that are falling in Lagos, 99% of them did not have any approval.
Mr. Motosho, what happens to the owner of a building site who goes to unseal the seal of the state?
It's a very serious matter. It's a criminal offense, and a couple of people have been brought before the law for doing that. They have paid the penalties, and like I said, the Ministry of Justice has a record of such infractions. Once the government goes to a building and says that the building is sealed, nobody has the power to go and unseal it. It's a criminal matter. And then we don't take candidate to that in Lagos.
And when a building is unsealed, how do people confirm that it was government that unsealed it?
Because that seal will no longer be there, and then the one written on the building is wiped off.
Okay.
And of course, some of the builders are kind enough to display their approval.
Okay. All right, Madam, this one is for you. I'm sure that we'll also take it up with the commissioner, but structural engineers and builders are two professionals largely responsible for the stability of buildings being constructed. This is from an email by Abiodun Sonif, all the way from Port Harcourt. He goes further to say that the strict passing of the national building codes into laws and its enforcement will assist in minimizing these collapses. Do you agree?
Quite well.
How significantly do you think that will play? Go ahead, madam.
Sorry.
I said, how significantly do you think passing of the national building codes into laws will help to cut down on the building collapses across the nation?
It will significantly help to, curb a lot of these issues, because when that code is in place, every professional, every one involved in the built environment will know their boundaries, will know what they are expected to do. And even the developer will know his boundary or what he's expected to do. So it will go a long way if that is passed to curb the collapses we are having in the the collapses we are having in the country.
Is that something that the state government can take up, Mr. Motosho, or is it something that only the federal government can handle?
I didn't get what she said.
No. I'm talking about the email that Mr. Abiodun Sani sent in, that structural engineers and builders are largely responsible for building collapses, and that if we pass national building codes into laws, it'll help to, and enforce them, it'll help to minimize these collapses.
I can't just put the blame on at the doorstep of some professionals. We are all guilty. I mean, most of the guys who are in that industry today, they are not professionals. They are people who just had money to invest in that industry. And because they have been there for longer and they have seen how professionals supervise their buildings, they now think they can cut corners because of their greed. And then nobody cares if any building does not go down. But once a building goes down, that is when we begin to do all these speculations and postulations and all of that. So I do not want to blame structural engineers or civil engineers on this. I mean, we are all guilty. All of us. Those of us who find people who are constructing buildings and we see that they are not using professionals and we keep quiet. Those of us who allow people to bring in materials in the dead of the night to start constructing, we are all guilty. Those of us who say that a building is sealed and all of a sudden the people go there to open it and begin to work and we keep quiet, we are all guilty. So I do not put the blame at the doorstep of those professionals only.
Madam, you wanted to add something?
Ayola? Yes. Okay.
Did you want to add something to that?
Yes, please. I didn't quite get the question he asked initially. And I think I want to agree with with the commissioner that the collapse is not totally at the doorstep of the builders or the structural engineers. Just like I said initially, that the developers should take responsibility for the investment they want to make in the building industry. So it's totally, like he said, everyone is involved. The developer, the organization that should watch on the quality of materials in the market, the professional on the site that should ensure that what they are using or the right thing is being done on the site. So it's not just the engineer or the builder. Everyone is involved in ensuring that, you know, the collapses we are having is minimized.
Madam, in talking about the reasons, the many reasons for buildings collapsing, there's also talk about the proper investigation of the subsoil. Please, can you just explain that to us briefly?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. That's very, very correct, because the soil actually bears the weight, the load from the roof to the foundation. And if the soil does not have enough capacity, what we call bearing capacity, if the soil is weak, the bearing capacity will be so low, and so it will not be able to, you know, carry the load that is being transferred to it. So it is always very, very necessary that before, especially high-rise buildings, is put in place, quality assurance, that is the assurance that this soil on which we're going to put this structure has, you know, is properly prepared for the foundation to be able to, for the foundation of the building to be able to carry the load and transfer to the soil under it. So, soil tests, soil investigation is very important in the issues of bearing the load that is transferred to it.
What do you mean by weak soil?
A weak soil is, like I said, the soil that it does not have the capacity to bear the load that is being transferred to it.
Can one tell that by looking at
laterite, what is topsoil, what is, you know, waterlogged areas, and, you know, if this entire load is estimated from the roof that is supposed to be transferred to this soil, and the soil is weak, is waterlogged, is not strong enough, it doesn't have the capacity, we call it bearing capacity, to bear that load, then the soil is weak.
Well, Madam, it would seem like you just raised another issue. Let me just quickly read this email from Dr. Peter Idialu, who says drastic improvement is required in monitoring and enforcement by the government officials using modern-day technology to ensure an effective building construction process. Well, you may want to speak to that, but the issue you just raised now about soil testing before you build a house, some people have bought their land now only for building, and they plan to build 3 floors of 2 flats each. Now, you have told them that they need to first of all go and test the soil. The soil they did not test before they bought. Now, it's like you're asking them for extra costs.
There's issue.
So how does that person go about that? Like, you know, expecting them to some extra costs that they may or may not have factored in.
Ayola, that's why we are grateful for this, for devoting so much time for this discussion, so that people will know what they are expected to do. You just don't, because you have money from somewhere and you want to build X number of buildings and X number of floors, and you just, you know, get somebody design and you start building. Proper processes need to be followed. If you want to put up high-rise, you must know, you must have an assurance of the strength of the soil that will carry that building. There must be that assurance. So if somebody, that's why I said it's good that we are bringing up all this, so that people who want to construct, please don't just go to site and start building, especially if you are going beyond 1 floor, 2 floors. You must know the strength on which that building is going to stand.
Well, it would seem like Engineer Akeju agrees with you here. He says via email that the solution, or rather one of the solutions, is to take delivery of building projects like production process, where you have quality control laboratories on site. It is not about site only, but soil testing. If you do wrong soil testing, you are bound to get wrong foundation or footing, or it may be called, or wrong foundation or footing, as it may be called. That's from Engineer Ola Akeju. But Mrs. Ayorinde is drawing attention to something here. She says, this one is for the commissioner. It says, he just wants to alert us through this medium on the danger of buildings coming up haphazardly around Abule Oja in Akoka, close to Unilag. All the old bungalows are being turned into high-rise buildings, all crammed together with each other and for commercial purposes. I wonder what can happen if there's a fire outbreak. The government should visit this area and avert danger on these streets. How do you respond, sir?
Well, I think that's a very good observation. That is what I'm saying by what I mean by saying that all of us, it's our duty to ensure that this kind of unfortunate incidents don't happen anymore in our society. So I will escalate this matter to my colleagues in fiscal planning to pay attention to Abule Oja. People are not supposed to build. We find out that when they go there now, most of these buildings may have been marked, they may have no approval, but people will just go and be building at night when nobody is watching. It's unfortunate that, well, the capacity to be at every building site all of the time is no longer there. It's not there, and I do not see anywhere in the world where it is there. It is all a question of character and expertise. Once the experts themselves, they lack character, there is nothing anybody can do about it. It's very, very tough. It's only the law that can now come in. And unfortunately, most of the time when you expect a deterrence, people are punished. Others do not seem to learn about it. They are blindfolded by the greed of what they are going to make out of every development that they go into. And they do not want to ensure that the rule of law plays its role in what they are doing.
Well, Engineer Motoshaw, all of a sudden I made you an engineer. Well, Mr. Motoshaw,
that's right.
the question that comes to mind around that is, why give so many approvals then? The last time we had a conversation around this, and one of our guests told us that at the last count, Lagos State had 35,000 active, or what they call live building sites already as we speak. So one then wonders if the capacity to monitor is not there, why give so many approvals? I'm just wondering if there is something if that's something to observe.
Yeah, the question is because of the economic importance of Lagos. In real estate, Lagos is the fastest growing, not even only in Africa, but one of the fastest growing city states all around the world. Everybody is coming to Lagos to invest in property. Foreigners are there, local entrepreneurs are there. So you have so many people asking for approval at the same time. But the question is not just because you are granting approval. It's because people are afraid to play their own role. You know, people are afraid to, they are forgetting about character in whatever they are doing. Before Lagos State government approves any building construction, there must have been a thorough examination of the application, and by experts who will now say, okay, people can go and build. But it is not at every stage of the building that you have a government official coming to monitor, because people are expected to play their own role too. It's only when they do not play that role that you see that we have problems. Like I said, hardly can you find a building that has fallen in Lagos that was not marked, either for contravening structural problems, rules, or for just what the last person who said that he may call that facade building. So it is not just a question of having the capacity to monitor. What the monitors are doing, they are trying their best. Because every building that has gone, hardly can you find one that was not marked. There have been instances of officials physically going to arrest people on site to stop them from working.
Okay. And
then people who are bent on just perpetrating illegality working at night when nobody is in there. And then the collusion of people who live in estates, especially where the rich and the powerful live, that you don't allow government officials to come in at any time to come and inspect buildings. And I think all of us are learning in a very hard way now, like what happened on Banana Island the other day.
Okay, Mr. Motosho, we've fast run out of time, so I'd just like you to take your last word in just one sentence, if you can manage that.
Well, my last word is that all of us, we should see this as the duty of all of us. The government is ready to champion it, that buildings should no longer be going down through our certified accreditor program, which should involve all experts. We have a pool of experts who will be looking at everything right from the approval stage up to the completion of buildings. There will no longer be the question of lack of human capacity to monitor all these buildings. But like I have said, we should see something. When we see something, you say something.
Say something.
All of us is for the safety of all of us.
Engineer Elizabeth Oricha, your last word, please.
Yes, thank you. Like I keep saying, please, the developers should take responsibility for their actions. And then the professionals on site, please, like what we say in engineering, you make mistake, your mistake buries you. So please ensure that when you are on a site, quality control, quality assurance, you don't joke with it. But let everyone ensure, even those who are supposed to ensure that standard materials are on site should please ensure they do their work. Developers, professionals, organizations that should monitor what comes into market for use in the built industry, everyone should be alert. Thank you very much for having me.
Engineer Elizabeth Oricha, former Director, Satellite Towns Development Department, Federal Capital Territory Administration, FCTA, as well as the Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Lagos State, Mr. Gbenga Omotosho. Thank you both for your time this morning. I'd like to just close this segment by quoting what you just said. Your mistake buries you. We'll be right back with another interesting conversation. Thank you for joining us.